Hey, what's up guys? Brian from Zombie Guitar here. In this lesson I'm going to be going over three types of chords, okay? I'm going to be going over major 7th chords, dominant 7th chords, and minor 7th chords. Alright, so I'm just going to be showing you the bar chord shapes of these chords, both rooted on the E string and the A string. It's going to give you a total of 6 different movable chord shapes that you can incorporate into your playing. Now, of course, you can always play these chords in many other ways on the guitar. You can play inversions of them. You can play variations of cage shapes and whatnot. But for this particular lesson, we're just going to stick to just these 6 chord shapes, okay? 2 for each type of chord. All right, so with that said, let's get on to, we'll start with the dominant 7th chords. Okay, so the first type of chord is going to be the dominant 7th chord that we're going to look at, also known as just a 7th chord. Okay, now in order to make a dominant 7th chord, what you're going to do is you're going to take a major chord and you're going to add what is known as the flat 7 to that chord. Okay, so a 7th degree is always going to be the note that is 1/2 step lower than the root. A flat 7th is always going to be 2/2 steps lower than the root. Okay, so let's say we wanted to take our A major chord, okay, just a regular A major bar chord. Now this bar chord shape can be played anywhere, but for this example we're just, we're playing on the 5th fret, so that makes it an A major bar chord. If I wanted to make that a dominant 7th chord, I would have to locate the note that is 2/2 steps lower than the root. Okay, so you have a root here, but I don't really want to try and figure out how to add that note down there. That would be too complicated, so let's look for another root within this chord. Here's another root right here, okay, so right where my pinky is, that's a root. Okay, so if I wanted to add this flat 7 in, I would simply locate the note that is 2/2 steps lower. So my pinky's on the 7th fret, down on the 5th fret is 2/2 steps lower, so if I remove my pinky, I'm left with that note being fretted. Okay, so basically in order to play a dominant 7th chord, all you do is you play a major bar chord rooted on the E string and you lift up your pinky finger, okay? Okay, so that is a dominant 7th chord, otherwise known as a 7th chord, okay? Now, let's try and play a dominant 7th chord or a dominant 7 bar chord rooted on the A string. Okay, so let's stick within this 5th fret area. If I was to play a dominant, or if I was to play a major chord, major bar chord rooted on the A string. Okay, in this example, this is a D major chord because my root is right here on the A string. It is a D major chord. Okay, so in order to make that chord into a dominant 7th chord, I would have to locate my root and then locate the note that is 2/2 steps lower than it. Okay, so let's find my root. There's a root here. There's also a root here, okay, which is right on the G string. Okay, so locating the root, 2/2 steps lower. I got to get that note in there somehow in order to make this a dominant 7th chord. Okay, so how would I do that? Okay, so I have this barred already, and then I could put my pinky here and my 3rd finger there. All right, now that note's in there. Okay, of course that can be played anywhere. This is a movable bar chord shape, just as all bar chords are. Okay, so here is your dominant 7th chord bar chord shape rooted on the E string and rooted on the A string. Okay, next we'll take a look at major 7ths. Alright, so now the next type of chord I'm going to talk about is going to be the major 7th chord. Now the major 7th chord gets a little confusing because the major, when you see a 7 and you see major, the major is referring to what you're doing to the 7th degree, okay? It's not referring to what type of triad it is. Okay, so if you're not talking about sevenths at all, you're not looking at any types of chord extensions, no ninths, none of that stuff, just regular major and minor chords, in that case you're referring to the type of triad. So you have an A major chord or an A minor chord, or a C major chord or a C minor chord, or a D sharp chord or a D sharp minor chord. Okay? As soon as you start adding chord extensions into the picture, like sevenths and ninths and all that stuff, and you see major in there, well, all of a sudden that major now is referring to what you're doing to the seventh degree. All right, so if you see a D major 7, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that the D part of it is a major triad. Okay, that major 7 is specifically referring to the 7th degree, what you're doing to that 7th degree. There's also such thing as a D minor major 7, which we're not going to be talking about in this video. That's the topic for another lesson. But again, D minor would be the triad in that case. It's a D minor chord with a major 7th added on to it. Okay? And you'll see what I'm talking about in a second once we create this chord. So basically, we're going to start with the bar chord shapes rooted on the A string this time, because it's easier to explain the concept. So let's first start off with a D major chord. Okay, your D major bar chord, as we already looked at previously, looks like this. Okay, so if you wanted to add a major 7th degree to that, what you would do is simply look for the note that is 1/2 step lower than the root. Alright, previously we looked at the dominant 7. Okay, in that case we added a 7th degree, also known as the flattened 7th degree, okay, which was 2/2 steps lower than the root. The major 7th is simply just 1/2 step lower than the root. Alright, so in order to make this D major chord into a D major 7 chord, I have to figure out how to add that major 7th degree. So here's your root. So if I wanted to add this note, I probably wouldn't do it there. I would probably look for another root somewhere within this chord. So here's a root here on the G string. So if I'm going to add a major 7th, I have to add this note here. Okay, so let's just go ahead and add that. Rearrange my fingers here. Okay, so I have my root here. Then I have my 5th here, like a power chord. Okay, and then I'm adding that major 7th here. Okay, major 7th degree is 1/2 step lower than the root. Okay, then up here I have my 3rd. Okay, and then up here I have my 5th again. So that's how you make a major 7th chord. That is a D major 7th chord, and the major is referring specifically to what I'm doing to the 7th degree. Okay, it is not referring to whether the D is major or minor. Okay, this is a D major 7th, and it has a major 7th degree. All right. So now let's take a look at how I would make a major 7th chord rooted on the E string. Alright, so same thing. Let's start with an A major bar chord. Now in order to make this an A major 7, I would want to add a note that is 1/2 step lower than the root. That's my major 7th degree. Alright, so that would be this note right here, which is either A flat or G sharp. Okay, but I don't want to add it there. I would rather try and find it somewhere else within this chord. Okay, so here's my root here. Falls right underneath my pinky on the D string. Okay, so I want to somehow try and add in this note here, 1/2 step lower. Now in order to do this, this is kind of an interesting trick, but it's also a little tricky to play, but once you get used to it, it won't be so bad anymore. So basically what you're going to do is if you were going to play an A minor chord in the open position, using your middle finger, third finger, and pinky, just play an A minor chord, you would take that A minor chord shape and you would slide it up to wherever you are, to wherever you're trying to play your major 7th chord at. Okay, so let's say I'm trying to make an A major 7th chord. I would slide it up right to there, right on the 5th and 6th fret. Alright, and then I take my available first finger and I put that on the root. I'm trying to make an A major 7th chord, so my first finger is going to go right on the A. Alright, so you have these 3 fingers doing your A minor chord shape, and then you have your first finger right on the root here. And now I want to mute the A string in between. So I just want to be playing this note, this note, this note, this note. Alright, and if you can get this note in there, that's fine, but sometimes it's easier to simply just play the 4 notes. Okay, so that is an A major 7th chord. So my root's here, right on the low E string. That major 7th degree, which falls 1/2 step lower than the root, is right here underneath my 3rd finger. Okay, the 3rd is still there underneath my pinky. That didn't change from the major bar chord. There's the major bar chord. This is the major 7. Okay, my pinky is now playing that note, which is the 3rd. Okay, and then any other note that's on the as part of the bar is part of the chord as well. Okay, so root, major 7, 3rd, and then this note right here is the 5th, and this note is the root. Okay, but you don't have to really worry about the high root if you find it's too difficult to play. But make sure that you mute out the A string. Okay. Alright, so we have an A major chord, we have an A7 chord, or an A dominant 7 chord, and we have an A major 7 chord. And then if you go to the rooted on the A string, you have a D major chord, or you have a D7 chord, or a D dominant 7 chord, and then you have a D major 7 chord. Alright, and these bar chord shapes can be played anywhere. They're all movable. Alright, so that's the major 7ths. Alright, and the final type of chord that we're going to take a look at is going to be the minor 7th chord. Alright, so a minor 7th chord is a minor triad with a 7th degree on it. Okay, otherwise known as a flattened 7th degree. So it's a minor triad with a flattened 7th degree. It is not a major 7th degree, it is a flattened 7th degree. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that for both bar chord rooted on the E string and the A string. Okay, so let's take our A minor chord. There's your A minor chord. So if I wanted to add the flattened 7th, otherwise known as just the 7th, I would add a note that is 2/2 steps lower than the root. Okay, so we already did that with the dominant 7th chords. So we want to somehow add in this note that is 2/2 steps lower, which in this case is the note G. Alright, so in order to do that, I take my minor bar chord. Here's my root here, underneath my pinky. I want to add in the note that is 2/2 steps lower because that's my 7th degree. So I could do that by simply lifting up my pinky. I don't mean to give you the finger here, but that's how you play the chord. So okay, so here's just a regular minor chord, A minor chord. And here's an A minor 7 chord. They sound similar, but you can interchange one another very often. Okay, so that's how you'd make a minor 7 chord rooted on the E string in the bar chord form. So now let's do the same thing for the bar chord rooted on the A string. So let's start out with a D minor chord. Okay, so you have your D minor chord. So I want to do the same thing. I want to add that 7th degree, which is 2 half steps lower than the root. Okay, so here's my note D, where that's the root of this bar chord shape, and right here is also falls right underneath my pinky. So in order to add a note that is 2 half steps lower, pinky, 1, I can just simply lift up my pinky, and then my first finger is barring the 5th fret, which takes care of that. So just lift up your pinky. Okay, so you have an A minor chord or an A minor 7th chord by lifting up your pinky. You have a D minor chord or D minor 7th chord by lifting up your pinky. Alright, so that's going to be it for this lesson today. We looked at the movable bar chord shapes rooted on the E string and the A string for the 3 most common types of 7th chords that you're going to encounter. Dominant 7th chords, major 7th chords, and minor 7th chords, okay? And just remember, when you see 7ths, and we're talking about 7th chords, and you see major in there, the major is referring to what you're doing to the 7th degree, alright? The major is no longer referring to the type of triad it is specifically referring to what you're doing to the 7th degree. A major 7th degree is the note that is 1 half step lower than the root, okay? A 7th degree or flattened 7th degree is 2 half steps lower than the root, okay? So just keep that in mind. So that's definitely one of the things that people get confused about. Alright, so lots of other ways to play 7th chords, but we're just keeping it simple for today. So in upcoming lessons, we'll look at some other variations and some other inversions and all kinds of other cool stuff. So with that said, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. Otherwise, thanks for watching.